Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I am Tiffany with Voices for Independence, Fitness and Activities. I am coming with another recipe as we continue our series on cooking across America. We are trying to hit every state and present a recipe that is popular and known for that state as well. So today we are moving on. We're headed south a little bit onto Arkansas. One of the most popular dishes across the South, and there's many states that take pride in this recipe, and Arkansas is one of them. It is the Southern cornbread. Now, Arkansas in particular is famous for the cornbread because they do theirs a little bit different. In Arkansas, they believe that you do not add any refined sugar to your cornbread. You only use the natural ingredients that you have, and you're adding honey as your sweetener. So I am going to share the Southern cornbread recipe with you from Arkansas. All you need for this is 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a cup of cornmeal, and we are going to be using the yellow cornmeal today, and that's how that gets that delicious yellow golden look after you bake it. We're going to be adding some buttermilk, a little bit of butter, baking powder, and honey, and that's all you need, and 2 eggs. So to get started, we are going to add 1 cup of cornmeal to our bowl. And then we're going to add a cup of flour. We are doing our dry ingredients separately today for the cornbread. We're trying to follow tradition here, so I am not going to skip any steps that I typically would in my lazy cooking methods that I have personally. So here is our 1 cup of cornmeal. We're adding that to the bowl. We're going to add our 1 cup of flour right to that. Let me move some of these ingredients out of the way. Now this one also is going to take baking powder, and it takes more than you would expect when we're making our breads and baked goods. It's going to take a whole tablespoon of baking powder. This bread also cooks at a very high temperature. This is going to go in an oven at 450 degrees, but we only need to bake it for 15 minutes. And what also is very important in this is how you bake it and what you bake it in, and we'll get to that in a moment. So I'm adding my 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and then we're going to mix our dry ingredients together. Let me get out my whisk. We'll just whisk it together to make sure all those dry ingredients are well incorporated. We don't want the baking powder to be in one area or the cornmeal. We want to make sure it's equally distributed. So there we go. We mixed up our dry ingredients. And now we're going to do our wet ingredients as well. So we're going to do that in a separate bowl. We'll set the dry aside. So here's our bowl for our wet ingredients. We're going to crack our 2 eggs for the Arkansas Southern cornbread. And then we're going to be adding a 1/4 cup of melted butter to this recipe. So our 2 eggs, our 1/4 cup of melted butter. And then we're also going to be adding 1 cup of buttermilk. Remember, I shared this with you earlier and in the past. If you do not have buttermilk at home, you can make your own simply by adding 1 tablespoon of vinegar or lemon juice to that regular milk that you have in your house. And you let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, and you will have your own buttermilk. So we're going to whisk this up real quick, making sure we break those yolks up and mix our wet ingredients together. We're also going to be adding our 3 tablespoons of honey to our wet ingredients. So first we want to get those eggs mixed in, and then we'll add our honey. And again, you want to make sure you turn your oven on to 450 degrees. It might take a minute to heat up that high, so get it ready. And for this, we are going to be using a cast iron skillet. It's a really popular cooking device that they use in the South and all across the country, actually. And it's kind of a lost art, but in the last few years, cast iron has become popular again in the cooking industry, and we are going to be using it today. Now, one way to prepare your cast iron skillet for cooking this evening, or this morning, I guess it's morning, we are going to, they say to use 1 tablespoon of bacon grease. That was a popular grease to use in the South in all their cooking because they would have it readily available as they cooked up their morning breakfast meat. But if you do not have bacon grease, which I do not have readily available, they say you could also just use a tablespoon of butter to grease your cast iron dish. So once you get that honey mixed in, we're going to add it right to our dry ingredients, and then we're going to just mix our cornbread till everything's incorporated. They don't want you to overmix this batter at all. Sometimes overmixing batters will cause for a drier, tougher bread. So we're just going to whisk it together. They say in Arkansas they like their recipe because it's more like a pancake batter, and therefore it allows their cornbread to be a little more light and fluffy. And that's what they pride themselves on, and how they differ their cornbread and how it stands out from other Southern cornbread recipes, according to Arkansas history. All right, so we mixed in all our dry ingredients and our wet, and they say just to stir till it's incorporated. And so we have all our dry and wet incorporated. I don't see any dry ingredients left. So then you want to get your cast iron skillet, and you want to lightly grease it, which I did do ahead of time. So I have mine lightly greased. You can also, if you wanted to, put it in the oven to heat up a little bit. They say sometimes some of the true authentic Arkansas cornbread recipes, they would get that bacon grease hot. So when you first poured your batter in, you would get that sizzle right before you baked. So then you just pour your batter right in your skillet, and cast iron can go in the oven. Just be careful when you're taking it out. The handle is not heat resistant, so it will be very hot. You'll want to use an oven mitt or something to pick it up when you go to take it out of the oven. Now, this cornbread is going to only bake for 15 minutes, so it's a really quick recipe as well. And cornbread was served at every meal in Arkansas back in the early 1800s, and when it was hugely popular. They'd make it in the morning before they went off to work, and be packed for their lunch, and it'd be ready for dinner as well. In the morning, they also served it with honey over top of it, or sometimes maple syrup. So it was a sweet or savory dish, depending on what they were serving it with. So that's all there is to it. We just made our traditional Southern cornbread with the recipe from Arkansas as we are cooking our way across America. I'll be back later today with another recipe, and we're moving on to Kansas. So I hope you stay tuned and catch me back here at 5. Thanks, everyone.